Okay, so this is probably not going to go away because it's a thing that Fox News has really seized on. They will not shut up about this because, like you said, they need to keep people terrified, and they can't just cut to pictures of Joe Biden because he's always holding an ice cream cone, and there's nothing less scary than Joe Biden. He's just not a scary man.
It's not a scary man. The only thing scary about Joe Biden was when Jim Carrey played him on SNL.
Oh, yeah, I didn't like that. Hello, and welcome to Hysteria. I'm Erin Ryan.
And I'm Alyssa Mastromonaco.
We've got some news to get to. Annoying. We're going to start with annoying again. And then we're going to get to something that's a little bit more fun. So this is for the listeners. Listeners, are your children coming home from school disturbed by the course in critical race theory they're being forced to take? Well, I have one question for you. Why the fuck are your children in law school? Because critical race theory, as an academic movement, started in the 80s with a Harvard law professor named Derek Bell and students of color at Harvard Law School who were upset with the conditions under which Derek Bell left the school. Those students included Kimberly Crenshaw, who we've had on this show before.
Friend of the pod.
Friend of the pod, who we've had on this show before, and she would go on to coin the term intersectionality. Basically, critical race theory as it has existed up until like 5 minutes ago is a re-examination of the law through a racial lens and a challenge to typical liberal approaches to racial injustice. So that's what critical race theory is. So critical race, this is like very Cliff's Notes, right? Extreme Cliff's Notes of Cliff's Notes. But critical race theory is a law school class. And your stupid kids, Braxton and Prinsley, are not taking it. Okay, so that being said, it is the shiny new thing that Republicans are waving around and getting mad about everywhere from Alabama to Florida to Texas to
Maine.
To Maine. Maine is always a wild card in these discussions. People are upset about this imagined proliferation of critical race theory, which we know is not being taught because it's a law school class. But Alyssa, what do Republicans think critical race theory is?
Republicans have gone around telling everybody that their kids are being taught critical race theory in elementary school and have gone on to try to pass laws banning such talk from kindergarten to grade 12 because they said that the entire point is to teach kids that they are evil, that America is evil, that we have nothing to be proud of. And I think that's it, right, Erin? That we're evil.
That's what they think is being taught in schools. I've been trying to read between the lines here because it seems like what's going on is that it's not a grassroots effort because these things never are grassroots. This is planned. This is dark money being funneled into it. This is big shadowy organizations trying to rile up the Republican base. My impression of it is they're using the words critical race theory because those words are like big and scary and academic sounding. Yep. But really what they don't want is kids being taught about racism or sexism.
Right. Like school. The isms.
No isms. Yeah. And like, it's very strange to me that that would be a thing that they would come down on because it's like, here's something that I was thinking when I was reading about Texas Governor Greg Abbott, one of the bitches least capable of governing.
Least capable. The worst, the least able to govern.
Least improved player. So Greg Abbott said something the other day about critical race theory being bad because education is not supposed to make kids feel bad about themselves. Like there's all this language in these laws and these proposals that these slack-jawed legislators are coming up with that implies that the children are being made to cry by being taught about history. Alyssa, I can't recall the word that conservatives used to use in reference to liberals who couldn't handle things.
Erin, would this be a snowflake?
It would be. It seems like snowflakery is being put in America's schools, and they're mandating that the schools become worse so that kids don't feel bad about themselves. it feels very weird to me. Do you know why they're doing this at this moment? Do you have any guesses as to why they're doing it at this moment?
Oh, I mean, Erin, they will look, Joe Biden's president. They have got to do whatever they can to scare the shit out of everybody. Now, the truth is, there is a lot that what they are doing is sort of making very dramatic. Look, we have learned a lot in the past couple of years. When you know better, you do better. Schools understand now, states understand that schools need to expand their curriculum. Now, a couple things. Would I want a teacher who believes this, like, you know, that this is being forced on them? Would I want those people teaching my kids about this? No, I would not. I would want all of my teachers to have feel really confident and have a good curriculum to teach, right? And I think that a lot of these lunatics are just exploiting, some kerfluffles that have happened across the country, but also they are just terrified that people might start seeing similarities in each other instead of differences, and that people might start understanding each other better instead of fearing each other. And so they're trying to make this the most catastrophic thing that has ever happened since Pizzagate.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. I think the biggest enemy of the Republican agenda is empathy.
Yeah,
and
totally.
Any curriculum that promotes empathy among children and teaches America's children to grow up thinking about the humanity of each other and the fact that everybody has, you know, different issues that they deal with, and they're treated differently depending on who they are. I think that's real bad news for the whole doctrine of fuck you, I got mine.
Yes. It's what we've always said, though, about this latest incarnation of the Republican Party. It's like, if you get something, it means it's being taken away from me, as opposed to everybody having things. So white history has been taught for forever. So now this version of American history, which should be taught, is somehow hurting the GOP. And it's just, it's crazy. And I hope they stop, Erin, because I don't like it.
Yeah, same. I don't like it either. Another thing that I keep thinking about is like, look, if you're from Florida and you get into a good school, you are going to get made fun of for being from Florida. Like, that's what people at good schools just like. It's just like, haha, Florida. Because people, like, college kids are kind of hacky, you know, in their ribbing of each other. So now, you know, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who in my brain I call Ron DeSantis because of the way Trump pronounces it. He like runs it all together like his name is Rhonda Santis. Anyway, Ron DeSantis is one of the most vocal voices in opposition to critical race theory, which there's no evidence that anything like it is actually being forced to be taught in any schools in Florida. But barring the teaching of like the role of inequality in American history is setting up kids from Florida to be made fun of even more when they go out of state to college.
Erin, that is such a good point. It's like, help us help you.
Yeah, come on. Guys, I know plenty of good people from Florida. Plenty. There are people who are great in Florida right now, but that does not change the fact that Florida Man exists, and it is a framework for you being made fun of. So, like, come on, Ron. Make it easier for the kids. Okay, so this is probably not going to go away because it's a thing that Fox News has really seized on. They will not shut up about this. Because like you said, they need to keep people terrified, and they can't just cut to pictures of Joe Biden because he's always holding an ice cream cone, and there's nothing less scary than Joe Biden. He's just not a scary man.
Not a scary man. The only thing scary about Joe Biden was when Jim Carrey played him on SNL.
Oh yeah, I didn't like that. That kind of gave me the feeling of, did you ever see the movie like Labyrinth or Return to Oz when you were a kid?
Yes, definitely.
It was just like, I don't like this.
Yeah.
I'm going to get nightmares. But yeah, I think you're exactly right that it's all about ginning up fear in a time when it's kind of hard to find like a visual representation of why the Republican base should be afraid. And so they're just like making shit up. But yeah, this is like another part of the annoying summer of 21, and we're just gonna have to live with it.
21's been a real annoyance so far.
It's nice to be annoyed rather than terrified, though.
That's true. We're vaxxed. We're here. we're annoyed.
Right. To make like a summer analogy, all of 2017 through 2020 was like the feeling of being chased by a bear, right? And now it is the feeling of sitting outside and having forgotten to put on bug spray and getting bit by a bunch of mosquitoes.
Which you know happened to me last week.
Oh, it did?
Yeah, I was covered.
Oh, no. Gosh, why can't mosquitoes just chill?
Shout out to Tiger Balm because that shit works.
Oh, good. Congratulations on that. Let's talk a little bit about some more. This isn't like urgent political news, but I think we're both kind of tired of hearing about the Putin-Biden summit.
I'm glad we're back to normalcy. We're back to the normalcy of the readout from this likely being, I'm just going to venture a guess. Talks were constructive, but nothing really happened.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Vladimir Putin is still a wee little man. And nobody's talking about, I mean.
Who's like pretending he doesn't speak English. You know he speaks English.
Does speak English. He's not, Vladimir Putin is not stupid. He might be puffier than a real housewife, as you said, but he's not stupid. Anyway, you and I are both kind of not really, we're just like kind of over the summits.
Like, okay, fine.
Yeah, whatever. But something that is impacting a lot more people right this second is there is a huge drought and heat wave in the western U.S. And
fuck a duck, it's bad.
It's really bad. I was just outside of Phoenix the other day, and it was 122 degrees.
I mean, Erin, what does that even mean? Like, you know, I have not spent, well, I almost did pass out once at the Grand Canyon because it was so hot, but that's just because I have a low threshold for heat tolerance. But what does that even feel like?
It feels like I had to get out of the car and walk across a small parking lot to go into the Starbucks so that I could pee. And I was like, I hate this. Like, there's something in my body that was like, no. It was like standing next to an oven door that's open and the heat is coming out. Yeah,
yes.
It's a dry heat, but it's cooking me, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, it doesn't feel, it's not right.
I think they call it being broasted, like broiled and roasted simultaneously.
Yeah, it is like being broasted, and it's not great. But, you know, there are some places that are taking measures to adapt to the fact that climate change means that there's going to be more days like this. And there are some places that are not. And, you know, we have a lot of listeners in Texas who are great and like working their butts off to change that state. And so we're not trying to be mean to you guys. The people in charge of Texas fucking suck.
They suck.
We are right at the beginning of summer, and Texas's power grid is already overtaxed, already failing. People are being told not to turn on their ovens or wash their clothes or turn on their air conditioners.
Think about that. 100+ degrees. Can you guys just like self-regulate and not use your AC? It's not Maine.
Yeah, what are you supposed to do? Just get in your car and drive around for like the whole day?
Erin, and it's not just, so this is what's happening in Texas, and it's already a hot mess. It's June. They're already asking people to not just like sort of limit, like to X number of hours a day. They're like, please, dear God, don't use any of your electricity. And in where closer to where you are, what's happening at Lake Mead and by the Hoover Dam is unbelievable. It's at its lowest level. I watched a YouTube video. If you stood street level and looked up at a 13-story building, that is how low the Lake Mead is from its historic levels. Oof. And they're saying now that the first places that will have water conservation are Nevada and Arizona. And people like the reason you and I talked about this, and it's so important for people to understand, is like this is the circle of life where we are now. There wasn't as much snow in the mountains, so there's not as much runoff into the lakes and the rivers. And so now we're at a place where, you know, farmers are going to have to conserve as much as 25% of their irrigation, which means 25% fewer crops. And the worse that this gets, you know, as much as we try to understand agriculture, the simplest way to put it is if they don't use the land and the land turns to shit, you can't farm on it again next year. Mm-hmm. You know, like, and so I think that this is such a critical, like we're on the brink of a Western U.S. straight up water shortage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And meanwhile, you know, we're in a summer where we're coming off of a year of everyone being told to stay home. and people kind of not really knowing what to do with themselves, not being able to fly. And I read an article this week in the Wall Street Journal about how people are rushing into national parks. And I'm not talking about all the national parks. America is just like festooned with beautiful public lands. Yes. And people flock to specific concentrated ones and instead of spreading out all over, which is just part of the problem. But I was reading that in Arches National Park outside of Moab, Utah, they have to shut everything down at like 9 a.m. because the park has already reached capacity by 9 a.m. Yeah. Canyonlands, which you may recall from the movie 127 Hours, place that used to be so remote that you could go there and a rock could fall on you and you'd have to saw your own arm off to get out. Canyonlands has had hours-long lines to get in because it's right next to Arches, and people who can't get into Arches are going into Canyonlands. Zion National Park, there's hours-long lines to get onto Angel's Landing, the trail, which is a very hard and scary trail. Here's the thing. All of these people are going to places like Utah where there is like shortages of resources. There's not really a plan to like address any of that. It's super, super hot. I'm just, let me suggest if you're going to go to Utah, try going to Capitol Reef instead. I was there not long ago and there's nobody there.
And she knows because she's the queen of Utah.
I'm an ambassador to Utah at best. Mitt Romney's the queen of Utah.
Allegedly.
All right. So let's see. So heat wave in the West, Texas can't govern. Do we have anything nice to talk about this week?
Erin, talk about what the Senate did.
The Senate did a thing. The Senate is going to make Juneteenth a national holiday, and we are going to talk to somebody who is also very excited about that. Today, we are excited to welcome one of Wisconsin's finest. She was the first Black woman ever elected to the upper chamber of the legislature of the Badger State, the first Black woman to represent Wisconsin in Congress. She's a mother, a grandmother, and great-grandmother, and she currently represents Wisconsin's 4th District. Welcome back for the 3rd time, Representative Gwen Moore.
Hey, ladies. Holla.
Great-grandmother. How many great-grandkids do you have?
I have 2 great-granddaughters.
Okay.
And my daughter has 3 daughters. So the 2 eldest have a daughter apiece. So I've got a queendom going.
Oh my gosh. I am here for that. 100% here for that. Okay. So let's get started on a kind of joyful topic today. I'm excited to discuss with you. On Tuesday, the Senate passed a bill establishing Juneteenth as a national holiday. It's now being sent back to the House for a vote. Can you talk to us a little bit about why it's so important for Juneteenth to be recognized in the U.S. as a national holiday?
You know, there is a lot of conversation about reconciliation, a lot of conversation about reparations, and a lot of conversation about critical race theory and the importance of Confederate statutes. And the reality is that the truth has got to emerge in some of these conversations. And so I think Jubilee Day or Juneteenth Day is in it and of itself a contradiction, because Juneteenth Day was literally, June 19th was literally 2.5 years after President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. And when Major General Granger rolled in and told the citizens of Galveston, Texas, that they were free and that slavery was over. They didn't even know it. And, you know, it's an irony because here people were free for 2.5 years and they didn't know it. And I think that we still have that same phenomenon in America now. You know, we're free, but we have a hard time voting. We're free, but we have lack of economic opportunity. We're free, but as we saw during the George Floyd trial, that we're disproportionately killed by police and don't have justice. And so this needs to be a signature, kind of a reminder that the struggle for freedom is ongoing. And while it's a great day to celebrate, there's a lot of work to do.
Congresswoman, speaking of celebrating, how do you plan to celebrate this year?
Well, tomorrow I'm going to go to the Capitol, Madison, Wisconsin, and we're going to raise the Juneteenth flag over the Capitol. And then on Saturday, I'm going to enjoy the traditional Juneteenth Day celebration on North Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Drive, where we have a marketplace, we have music, food, vendors, speeches, of course, by politicians like me, and just sort of a gathering in honor of it. I have a dress that I bought a couple of years ago, paid a lot of money to get it hemmed just right for the occasion. So appropriate. And I am going to, it's going to be a really relaxing day. It's also International Knitting in Public Day. So I'll probably have some knitting needles so that I can, maybe make myself a Juneteenth flag or pride, something or another, just something to recall this moment.
Do you have a most memorable Juneteenth celebration?
Well, let me just tell you this. Juneteenth Day has been celebrated in Milwaukee for 50 years. And it's one of the oldest celebrations in the country, and certainly probably the oldest one in up north. And so there are a lot of memorable Juneteenth days, certainly days when we have been practically rained out and ran in for shelter and then come back out. But I have enjoyed Juneteenth Day. I think the most memorable thing for me is the late Jan Kemp, who was the first person that told us about Juneteenth Day, and God rest her soul. And she went to Northcott Neighborhood House, and the former director there, Mac Weddle, they pulled it together. And, the first celebration, there are about 3,000 people there, and we've had as many as 170,000 people walk down those streets on North Dr. Martin Luther King Drive. So to watch the celebration grow every year, for it to be the kind of event where you can teach young people about the history of it is just awesome.
Oh my gosh, that sounds so fun. I've never been to Milwaukee on a Juneteenth, but that you're really selling it. I kind of want to go now.
Yeah, come on.
Milwaukee is a great town, and also go Bucks, by the way.
Oh,
I know, but they're not out of it yet.
That's true.
They've still got some time. It would be a really special Juneteenth if the Bucks could get a couple more wins also. It'd just be like some gravy on top. Okay, so Juneteenth, as you've discussed, is a celebration of the freedom of enslaved people. But what's funny about the idea of freedom is that while the definition is really straightforward, it's kind of been hijacked and contorted by conservatives to mean something that's really antithetical to it. What do you think freedom means in 2021 in this country?
I guess I couldn't disagree with whatever definition Republicans have, except that freedom is for everybody, not just for them. There ought to be an opportunity for everybody to live up to whatever their potential is. It's not the same thing as equality. We're not all equal in a certain sense, but some equity. Just give me a chance. Like James Brown said, I don't want nobody giving me nothing. Just open up the door. Mm-hmm. For me, and I'll do it myself. One of the things that it is so painful to think about in terms of Juneteenth is that the very first Juneteenth day of 1865, 1866 was celebrated with great fervor, but there was immediately a backlash. The Ku Klux Klan was formed. When they established the Freedmen's Bureau and tried to help there was a time when there were African-American United States senators and people in Congress, and the backlash was so harsh. We're being revisited with that same sentiment now, where, all across the states, we see hundreds of bills being offered to prevent that freedom, prevent us from voting. And even though we were, quote unquote, free in 1865, celebrated Juneteenth Day, it really was the 1960s before we had the universal right to vote. And now we're seeing a concerted effort to stop one of the most basic freedoms, and that is just to have the franchise.
Well, Representative Moore, thank you so much. Before we go, I don't want to start a Wisconsin fight, but what is Ron Johnson's deal?
Well, just let me say this. I'm happy that he's not going to object to Juneteenth Day this time, unless something has changed. He's not going to object to us making it a federal holiday like he did last time when it couldn't go through. But you know what? I would trade his vote for Juneteenth Day or his lack of interference any day for S1, for our right. So I think that it's just, we'll give them Juneteenth Day. But I'll be darned if we're going to give them the right to vote, the right to hold states and the federal government accountable for treating everybody's franchise as precious. So, right on, Senator Johnson, you're letting us have Juneteenth. And maybe this will open up the door so you can let us vote.
Yeah. Well, you heard it here first. On Juneteenth, we will all be planning on how to get SB1 passed.
That's right. And I got to get started on ironing this dress I'm going to wear.
Can you what's it look like? Can you tell us about it?
Well, you know what? It's an African print. And it's got the kind of a big wide skirt, but it needs ironing. And I've had it for a couple of years. And I have never worn it because it needs ironing. So I'm going to sacrifice for Juneteenth and pull the iron out.
Well, we hope you post a lot of pictures so that we can see this dress in action on the 19th.
Okay.